giving I a fight. But just like the sun, I'll emerge from the dark into the light. Oh, in whole night tonight, not for them to love, but them not live to right. Yeah, can I say, still they giving I a fight. But just like the sun, I'll emerge from the dark into the light. Oh, in whole night tonight, not for them to love, but them not. Yeah. Just give unto I what you want to I. From the dark, I emerge into the light.
We were talking about government policy adapting bad sociological policies.
Okay. Yeah. They definitely do rehash and reintroduce those old policies, because the thing is, if you even listen to ex-Prime Minister Blair and the things that he said about the black family recently, we can't control our children and all this kind of stuff, it's exactly the same as what they were saying.
30 years ago.
Like 30 years ago. It's just like guaranteed within the next probably year, you will hear something like 88% of street crime is done by black boys. They reel it out every 5 years, every 10 years. They do that. That's why I actually said at a conference last year, I think it was on youth crime or something, I said the next white sociologist who comes up to me and tells me he wants to interview me because he's got £800,000 to find out what's wrong with black youth, I'll strangle him. Because we know what the problems are.
Right.
We've been telling you what the problems are for years, but you don't want to listen. It's like when people say, they'll come up with these statistics. Oh, how many percentage of black boys fail in school? Well, they're not really failing in school. The school is there to fail them. We inherited a system that was designed to fail white working class children. And I keep saying to people, you need to have the right conversations. So for instance, in my new book, which I can plug, called Whiteness Made Simple, Stepping into the Grey Zone.
Okay.
Because people need to go into the grey zone. Because we don't have a grey zone as black people, you know.
Define the grey zone.
White people do.
What is the grey zone?
The grey zone is that area where you go in and you feel very uncomfortable. It's almost like you're naked because you can see what the truth is. As black people, we navigate that zone. So for instance, it might be Les is going for a job with a solicitor. Les knows he will look more acceptable if Les does this. White people don't have to think about that. We do.
But was that not articulated by W.E.B. Du Bois in The Souls of Black Folk?
Yeah, double consciousness.
Yes, exactly. The duality of our existence as Africans, if you will, but as Westerners.
Yeah. Because that's exactly what the point I'm making. However, white people don't have to think about that. Yeah. They don't have to make those choices. Right. White people can choose whether or not to acknowledge racism. Right. I didn't see it. I don't think it was racist, you know. Whereas the best people to talk about that is us, because we're the ones living the experience.
Right.
And that's why when I say, you know, be very careful what comes out of universities. Be very careful when people come up to you and say they want to study your community. Find out what are they going to do with that information. For instance, there's this guy, old EastEnders actor, goes around the world looking at gangs.
Ross Kemp.
Yeah. Right. Now, he's got a program that they've been plugging since last week. Ross Kemp on gangs in Jamaica. Now, this is how it's themed. How did an island paradise become whatever by gunmen? When was Jamaica a paradise and for who? Jamaica was never a paradise for Africans. It's never been a paradise for us. It was never a paradise for our ancestors. That's why they live in the most inhospitable parts of that island. So who was it a paradise for?
Other than rich tourists.
Exactly. It was never a paradise for us. So even the premise that they work from when they are trying to give us our own stories is wrong and it's flawed. And that's what my major problem is with a lot of this stuff. So whenever they come out with these statistics about, you know, black youth, this... I was interviewed a couple of months ago on Radio Leicester. They phoned me up. They had some big conference about crime, something, I don't know. They phoned me. They said, oh, Dr. Henry, we've just had this conference on crime and, you know, I want you to tell me what you think about, let's say they said, 80% of, let's say they said something like 80% of black boys are involved in crime, I don't know, whatever, yeah. Let's say they said 80% of black boys involved in street crime. And I said, okay, what do you want me to say? And they said, well, the statistics. And I said, but the statistics are based on what? I said, what is 80% black boys in the context of 58 or 62 million in the UK? What percentage of black boys are 88%? Because I said, you could well be talking about 88% of black boys could be the same number as 5% white boys involved in the same thing, if you're talking physical numbers. Right. So I said to them, what is the context of your statistics? They couldn't answer. Right. And I said, well, then I can't comment. Because I said, there's not 2 million, there is about, if there are 1.5 million African and African Caribbeans in the UK, there's a lot of us.
It's my understanding that we constitute, what, 3% of the population, yeah?
No, minorities constitute 3%. But minorities can be Irish.
Yes.
It can be the Romanis. It can be these people coming from Eastern Europe. True. Biggest overstayers in this country right now are Australians, but they'll make you think it's Jamaicans or whoever. And this is why people get confused. Yeah. There are more Southeast Asians than there are Africans and African Caribbeans in this country or in the United Kingdom, but we get confused. Yeah. So what I say to them is, if 1.5 million are African Caribbeans, and let's say young men are 400,000, what percentage of the 400,000 do you really want me to believe partake in street crime? True. Because I actually said to them, what I would have to do is go to every school in South London, get all the black boys and said, come, make we run up and down the street and go and back. To live up to those statistics, but this is what they do. Yeah. You know, as a researcher, I know that if I wanted to do a poll for the United Kingdom to see how they feel about, I don't know, dogs crapping on the pavement, I only have to poll 1,500 people.
Fair enough.
It's ridiculous to tell you what 62 million people think. Oh, the Maury poll says this. Why do you think they always get their general elections wrong?
With their predictions, yeah.
Exactly. It's just ridiculous. And that's why people always say to me, you know, where's the stats? I say, I don't deal with stats. Yeah. That's why I basically, exactly, yeah, exactly. And that's why I always say to people, what you get from me is an account, a truth, not the truth. But you're not going to have me go out and say, you know, 100 people told me this and that. Because usually you select your, who you're going to speak to.
Right. You actually gear your surveys.
Of course you do. You gear them, you manipulate the questions. You know, it's like the famous philosopher Karl Popper said, all swans are white. And then he said, what you do is you take a group of people, let's say you go and sit by the banks of the River Thames, our sample is 1,000, and we're going to prove that all swans are white as a scientific experiment. So we only need 3 people. Because once you can't verify it, 2, coincidence, 3, scientific proof and truth. That's how science works.
Yeah, Lord. Yeah. Still they giving all your fight, but just like the sun, I'll emerge from the dark into the light. Oh, in the whole night tonight, not for them to love, but them not live too right. Yeah, again I say, still they giving all your fight, but just like the sun, I'll emerge from the dark into the light. Oh, in the whole night tonight, not for them to love, but them not. Yeah. Just give unto I what you want to I. From the dark I emerge into the light. Hear you always whispering and talking about the wrongs that I've done. Never hear you say nothing about the rights. Yeah. And just when I think that things are getting better, seems like it's only get worse. Hey, but I don't watch that factor, just let it build my character. Who job bless, no man curse. And I sing again, still they giving all your fight, but just like the sun, I'll emerge from the dark into the light. Oh, in the whole night tonight, them as a love, but them not live too right. Yeah,